The opioid crisis appears to be changing. Health experts say more people are fatally overdosing on synthetic opioids, such as fentanyl, compared to their prescription counterparts.
News 3's Brooke Schlyer has more on synthetic opioid use in the region and one father's message to families of those dependent on the drugs.
The American Medical Association study found that of the more than 42,000 opioid-related deaths in 2016, 46% involve synthetic opioids, while 40% involve prescription drugs. Researchers say that's more than a threefold increase for synthetic opioids from 2010. The change holds true in Illinois and Kentucky, where overdose fatalities are increasing due to fentanyl being mixed with heroin or consumed on its own. This comes as prescriptions for opioids in both states have decreased.
That's me and Austin on a trip. We went on a motorcycle trip, spent the night, and it was so hot in that tent.
In his Paducah home, Corbin Damron looks back at memories of his son, Austin. That's all he has left.
There he is when he was little.
Austin passed away in March from a heroin overdose. The heroin was laced with fentanyl, which is 50 to 100 times more powerful than morphine.
I don't know what triggered it, why he thought he needed to do it. But he did. It was his decision to do that. But he certainly wouldn't have done it if he known that it was laced with fentanyl.
Even more tragic.
It was his birthday. He was 28 years old. We rushed to Western Baptist Hospital, and about an hour later he was pronounced dead. It was the same hospital he was born in.
The most recent data for Kentucky shows that in 2016, fentanyl, either combined with heroin or alone, was involved in 47% of the 1,330 overdose deaths, up 34% from 2015. Like many, Austin's relationship with drugs started at a vulnerable age.
High school. High school is readily available in high school. The pain pills, and started experimenting with those.
Gradually becoming more dependent on the drugs.
And when he got here on Father's Day of last year, he actually had bruises in his neck from shooting up. And we talked about the dangers of it. It's Russian roulette. He goes, sometimes, Dad, I don't care, because the craving is that much.
Tomorrow night, I'll finish Austin's story with part 2 of the special, focusing on the resources available to help drug users who live in this area and why they often relapse.
Continuing coverage tonight of a major change in the opioid crisis. As we told you last night, more people are now fatally overdosing on synthetic opioids, such as fentanyl, compared to their prescription counterparts.
We also introduced you to a Kentucky man whose son died from taking heroin laced with fentanyl. News 3's Brooke Schlyer joins us in the studio tonight to share why it can be difficult for drug users in our region to get help. Brooke.
Paducah resident Corbin Damron passed away in March from a heroin overdose. The heroin was laced with fentanyl, which is 50 to 100 times more powerful than morphine. Even more tragic, Corbin died on his 28th birthday. Corbin says Corbin tried getting help many a times from methadone clinics, which ended up being too costly.
It's just insane. When you can buy heroin out there for $10, or if you want to go the safe route, that's going to cost you $76. And their idea of treating it was go to AAA meetings, or alcohol anonymous AA meetings, which I didn't think was really geared towards any type of opiates.
Even the family tried getting help.
There was no support group.
Resources in Paducah are limited for both drug users and their families. There's only one Narcotics Anonymous meeting a week, while Smart Recovery, a free support group like NA that touts a scientific approach, has its nearest meeting in Benton, Kentucky, a 35-minute drive. When it comes to family support groups, like Families Anonymous, the closest meeting is actually in another state, Evansville, Indiana, 2 hours away. And the nearest Nar-Anon family group is in Fulton, Kentucky, a little closer at 50 minutes. Raleigh Hawk, Director of Communications for Family Counseling Center, says this is partly due to labeling those with substance abuse issues as addicts.
They're separated from their community because of that. Once we have that, we're not as a society providing resources for them.
And less funding in rural areas for support groups, which are not seen as necessary.
They see, okay, cops, firefighters, judges, ambulance drivers, that all of this, they see these as necessary resources. And so if anybody were to touch the tax funds that went to that, they'd be very upset and they'd vote accordingly.
All leading up to Austin's untimely death consuming fentanyl.
Profit margins is the reason he died. People that don't care is the reason he died.
The potent drug is mainly made in Chinese labs and then shipped to Mexico and smuggled across the U.S. border. Sergeant Ryan Kahn with the Paducah Police Department says fentanyl has become increasingly popular throughout the country because it's stronger and cheaper than similar drugs.
You can get a whole lot more bang for your buck, so to speak.
Especially following the crackdown on pharmaceutical companies.
All of a sudden you cut off a source of supply and don't at the same time offer a balanced treatment or a balanced method for these people to have the opportunity to clean up and get sober.
Although solving the opioid crisis is a multifaceted issue, part of the solution is getting these drugs off the street, which Kahn says can be difficult.
And the criminals, knowing that if they get caught after having killed somebody, that's quite possibly a manslaughter, homicide, or even murder charge with a 20 years to life sentence. So people are willing to fight a lot harder, go to a lot greater means.
Meanwhile, Kahn, Hawk, and Corbin all urge those who need help to get it, or families to do so for their loved ones.
Love your children. Give them all the support you can. Get them help right away. Don't wait for it to get bad.
Corbin also described Austin as a loving son, brother, husband, and father who enjoyed traveling and woodworking. He hopes that by sharing Austin's story, at least one life can be saved. Reporting in studio, Brooke, Schlyer, News 3.